You are listening to Eastman's Flycast, an adventure fly fishing specific podcast covering travel, tactics, and next level insight. Now your host, Brian Barney.
Yo, what's happening, guys? Brand new Eastman's Flycast. Really been having fun doing this, and today's is a great conversation. So I got introduced to Paul Bourcq, and so this is the first time I've met him and had a conversation with him. The guy is so fishy. He just lives to fish. So I have him give a little bit of background, at the beginning of the podcast and kind of talk about some of the competitions he's done. And competitions aren't really my deal. In fact, I don't know anything about them. But the conversation is just awesome. And the one thing about these competitions is that it places all these different countries and all these great fly fishermen of who can be the best, the most productive fishing a stream in a given day. And Paul has had personal success, gold, and team success, and then he's been real successful coaching in the fly fishing world. And it's just interesting to hear, the best of the best and how you become more efficient, like how his thought process works. And he revolutionized the, fishing, at least for the United States, being able to place high in these competitions. So it's just a fascinating conversation. Along with that, Paul just loves to fish. That guy, he lives for it, and he lives for fishing all these different waterways and lives to figure it out. And so we just dive into it, and what a great back and forth. Like, I really enjoyed this conversation. Really enjoyed getting to meet Paul. He's a military background. He's got his media company, which we talk about, Drift Media, and just everything he's got going on. He's just a great guy. I really enjoyed getting to meet him. I really enjoyed the podcast. I think you guys will enjoy it too. Over there at Eastman's, this week on Eastman's Elevated, I have Glenn Eberly, coined by Ike, the most interesting guy in the world. Just a great conversation with him and Ike, and those guys are buddies that go way back, so there's a lot of jokes and a lot of laughing. I think my stomach hurt by the time I got done, but just a great recording, so that's over on Eastman's Elevated. And I'm really excited about some of the conversations I have coming up on Eastman's Flycast. It's been really fun doing this, sharing my journey. Fishing's just been great. I got to get out this week here. Salmon flies that I talk so much about are starting to hatch on these different rivers. So this construction's getting in the way, but necessary. I'll get my work done, and I'm definitely going to get out some evenings this week. Some good March brown hatches coming off. Our water, we're starting to get our runoff. Got muddy there for a couple days and then kind of cleared up. But yeah, just be awesome to get out and go hit that river. Summer's coming. The next 2 months is our peak season. So just super excited about it. Got everything rigged up, ready to rock and roll here. So just got to start getting out a little bit more. Got some great podcasts coming up for you guys. Paul Bourcq's a great one today. I've got one of my really good friends, Brian Rosenberg. I've known him for about 15 or 20 years. Just one of the most knowledgeable guys on the Madison. So we dive into ecosystem and fly tying, and we dive into dry flies, and just an amazing conversation. That guy is so fishy. I went a little long. I'll probably have to drop it in a couple episodes. I had him out to the house, and we had a couple cold ones, and we got talking, and I think the podcast stretched to about 2 hours, but just some great recordings. I'm really having fun. Thanks a bunch, you guys, for the shares and for the follows on social media and subscribing and rating this podcast. That really helps me out as well. So I appreciate the support. Let's get into this thing. So this is Eastman's Flycast. This is Paul Bourcq. I'm your host, Brian Barney. Here we go. Thanks so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it, and such short notice.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Yeah. Well, good. Maybe we'll get right into it here. Maybe you can give us just a quick background. Gosh, I read that article that you posted. You've done some incredible stuff for fly fishing. I just don't think I could do the intro justice. Can you just give me a quick background real quick of your fly fishing?
Sure. So, interestingly enough, I didn't start fly fishing until I was around 18. and it was a college course, and I had to take that or intro to art history. So I said, well, I'll take fishing, and I got introduced to fly fishing there. I'd been fishing, all of my life, literally, but I didn't start fly fishing until I was 18, and I knew the second I did it, like, this is my thing, and that ultimately led to, man, a pretty crazy ride with the U.S. team and guiding and casting instruction and just general, fly fishing mania, if you will.
Yeah, I'd say you've been all over doing it, and then created this media company, right?
I did, yeah. So I was actually a police officer full time, and I was working shift work, so I had several days off a week, and I was guiding, fly fishing, doing casting instruction. I was competing, and as a hobby, I like taking pictures and shooting video. I was inspired by, a lot of the snowboard films and some of the climbing films, and although I didn't snowboard that much, I just loved the imagery of it, the storytelling. So I started taking pictures, and one thing led to another, and I didn't really get formally trained. I just tried to emulate the people that inspired me and try to understand, like, how did they get these images, and basically, I felt like I had this obligation to, show the things I saw each day in fishing in the outdoors the way I saw them. And then one thing leads to another, and people liked the look, and I ended up leaving law enforcement full time to pursue drift media productions, and we've been really busy since then doing both marketing and imagery and campaigns for a number of companies globally.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's a testament that the whole thing's a testament. You're fly fishing, picking it up late in life, and accomplishing everything you did in this media company. Like you say, no formal training or anything, just liking a style of shooting and emulating what you see. But it's a testament to whatever you love in life and whatever you're willing to work hard at, you can get better and improve at and make a next level product like you have with your films. That's amazing, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, it's like, I'm kind of a nerd about it, but it's like stages of competency. If you often in fly fishing, you'll hear people say as a qualifier, well, I've been fly fishing, or in fishing in general, because I certainly do more than just fly fish, but they'll say, oh, well, I've been doing it for 30 years. But there's one guy's been doing it for 30 years, and he goes twice a year to Montana with his friends, and another guy thinks about it every day, every second. So it's like, how much time are you putting in? Like, are you consciously competent at this skill? And, it's literally all I thought about. And to this day, I think about fishing every day. I think about telling stories. I think about imagery every day. And, I think it's all about the time you put in. And I certainly wasn't formally trained in either of those, but if you love it, you can do it. I mean, nobody asked me where I went to school. How'd you do this? They just want to know, how good was your last project, and when can we talk?
Yeah, that's the difference. Just what you stated, the 10,000 hours. Like
that's right. Yeah.
Spending your time doing it, talking about it, thinking about it. And just a little background for you. Like we started this fly fishing podcast. This has been a passion for me for the last 20 years, and I'm located out here in western Montana, in a great area around a bunch of streams and things. But along with that, my love has been bow hunting, and so I started by starting this. Eastmans elevated this hunting podcast and starting that, but. That's exactly it. It's just a blue collar, work construction, have a small construction company, but just this average guy but all I thought about was backcountry bow hunting, and fly fishing along with it, and getting better and how to improve at it. It's just those, like being engaged in the thought process of fly fishing or the thought process of bow hunting. That's what really drove me. And so I just put in that 10,000 hours of learning about it, spending the time, being disciplined, really being a student of the game, and then from that you're able to accomplish whatever you want in life. It's it's just so great to hear your story and something that you just loved and put all this time in, and then able to build this media company and able to build this life around fly fishing. Like some of the adventures you go on fishing now is just amazing. Some of the things you capture is just absolutely wild. And you just created this life all for yourself just for that love of fly fishing. Um, I just think that's incredible.
Yeah, I think, it's like a lot of people will say like, oh man, you're living the dream, or, you've heard that too. Like you get to fish for a living, which isn't really true. But as you know, like bow hunting or anything, and I hunt all the time, it's like you can do that. Like at the end of the day, you can put in the time. The U.S. youth team's an example. Like it is achievable. Like anything that you can practice and be better at, there's no short of like a physical disability or you're working, 10 jobs and you don't have time. Like I always thought, and I believe to this day, that reps are reps. It's the same in the tactical world, when we're shooting or whatever, we say, okay, well, we just want to get good reps in, good, clean reps. And everybody learns differently. I mean, there's auditory learners, there's visual learners, there's kinesthetic learners. Like thinking about doing something and working that process in your head builds competency, builds neural pathways. Like thinking about bow hunting all the time, like visualizing that stuff when you're driving around, and I'm sure you drive as much as I do, it matters. So you don't have to, fish in 6 world championships. You don't have to fish in all 50 states. Like you can take what's in your back door and get really, really proficient at something. I mean, we did it for years. People thought we had a ton of money and, some sort of like NBA level recruiter, and we didn't. We were poor rednecks and just making it happen. We just wanted it. We wanted it bad. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, and you've taken fly fishing to a totally another level, or the next level, like to be the best in the world at something, to be the most effective or efficient on any different stream. That's just amazing, man. Like what are some of the secrets you picked up on or that helped you throughout the years to really, like the reps, but there's an intelligence level there, or a dissection level when you get to a new stream or you look at a new stream to be the most effective on it. I just think that's crazy, like to take those skills and to transpose them to all these different streams. So what would you say would be some of the biggest secrets for you, throughout your journey of fly fishing?
Sure. 2 things, and hopefully I remember the second thing, and I'll try not to be long-winded. I'll share the most important thing I ever learned in fly fishing. And the second part, I'll get into how we were successful winning gold medals. I will start by saying when I first heard about competitive fly fishing, I thought it was goofy. I was like, I don't know if I like that. It was by a friend of mine, Gordon Vanderpool, who's a guide, fantastic angler, one of the best I know. So anyway, I fished a tournament and I came in like second place and young and was like, oh, maybe I'm good at this. And then the next tournament I came in dead last. I think there was 31 people in that tournament. And I knew that 30 people knew something I didn't know. And it wasn't so much competitive as it was a thirst for knowledge. I grew up a single mom and I didn't have a whole lot of direction. So I was like, man, 29 people or 30 people know more than me. I wish I knew what they knew. Not so much to beat them, but just because I thought, wow, I could shave 2 years off my learning curve here if I could just talk to these guys. And that's what happened at tournaments. So that's why I got interested in tournaments. Wasn't to like some sort of weird, unhealthy competitive drive. It was just the only way I could get around people I respected and I knew that were better than me. And many are much better than me to this day. So the most important thing I ever learned in fly fishing is that water, or what we'll call the best water, like where we will catch the most fish, the highest probability water, is dependent on insect activity. So the short story is, if you have 50 casts to make, and that's it, and you think to yourself, okay, where am I going to put these 50 casts that have the highest chance to catch a fish? Everybody has essentially the same answer, like, oh, in this pocket, on this edge, wherever. But the reality is that water, I see it as just a conveyor belt for food, with the exception of, some mitigating factors. Fish are just using that water as a conveyor belt for food, and they're going to set up accordingly. So depending on the bug activity, i.e. food, will will change where fish position themselves. So I will try to spend the majority of my time in high probability water. That way I know that I can catch fish, whether I'm guiding or competing or just taking my 10-year-old out. I'm there to catch fish. So to dive in a little deeper, I was in France in 2011, and there was a guy there. There was a legend. I'd heard about this guy, and nobody knew. His name was Jan Ostier. His son had been killed in a crash, and he was a very successful coach of the French national team. But he kind of backed out the game after his son got killed. Tragic. And everyone said, oh, man, this guy's the guy. No idea what he looked like. Never talked to him. I just knew his name. I saw an older gentleman fishing on a bridge in the middle of nowhere in Mons, France. And I noticed that he had the right gear, the right setup. He was making the right cast. He was clearly just a stud. I mean, this guy was a badass. He could fish. I walked down and said, hey, my name's Paul. What's your name? He said, Jan Ostier. I said, I've heard of you. He said, have you heard of me, American? I told him what I knew. I said, I want to fish with you tomorrow. He says, okay. So we go up to a run, and it's a bend in the river. And there's an inside bend, and it's super nice. I mean, just like sexy squared. Everybody's like, man, that inside bend's it. There's an outside bend. Obviously, the water's moving faster. There's a little bit of an edge on the outside, but not much. No bugs were hatching. And he said, if you're going to fish here 10 casts, where would you fish? I said, well, I'd put 10 casts on this inside edge. He said, well, I'd beat you. I said, okay, well, let's fish. Show me. So I fish the inside edge. I catch one or two. I fish the outside edge where the majority of that current was flowing. The seam was smaller. I catch 6 or 7 fish. And he says, listen, bugs aren't hatching, so any food coming down, these fish are going to position, on this side where the food is. I said, okay. So we fish the rest of the day, and I'm learning odds and ends. We come back to that spot a few hours later, and there's flies hatching. Danica, they're these white mayflies. So he says, hey, there's bugs hatching. What do you think now? And he explained to me basically that because these bugs are hatching now, the easiest place where these fish can set up to get the most food with the least amount of calories is in this edge that looks, sexy. So I want you to fish again. So keep in mind, I caught 6 or 7 on the outside and 1 or 2 on the inside earlier. I go back and fish, and it switches. I catch 7 or 8 on that nice fat inside edge and only 1 or 2 on the outside. And for whatever reason, that day clicked in my brain, and I said, okay, I understand this. And it's the same thing with pocket water. So you go through pocket water, and you've done it, I'm sure, where you crush them in there, dry dropper, nymphing, or whatever. You go back, and they're not there. Like, man, it sucks today. It's not necessarily true. Like when bugs are hatching, those pockets are great. It's a repository for food, and those fish slide up in there and eat and position themselves there. When bugs aren't hatching, there's no reason for them to be there. Like those pockets, unless it's a center kind of laminar, well-fed, heaviest flow of the stream, there's no reason for those fish to be there because the food's not there. So I applied that knowledge that water is dependent on bug activity as one of kind of my cornerstones of my coaching principles, and it was really good to us. I mean, Team USA at that time said, well, if I put a fly in every inch of my beat in my section of water, I'll win. But that's not true. Because if a guy that's equally as good as you puts flies in higher probability water more often, he can beat you even if he's not as quote-unquote good as you. So that might be hard to understand, but essentially we knew where to spend our time. Like if I had 10 casts to make, I'm going to put 7 of them in the right place, and I'll check the other place. And we found that it worked so much that we could even stay on top of fish as they were moving to hold in different places that predated the hatch. So we'd see fish start to move up and move out, and then we'd see the bugs hatch. So we didn't have to wait for blue wings or caddis or midges or whatever it was to hatch, identify, and make some sort of adjustment. Like because of how we fish, we could stay ahead of this movement, if that makes sense.
Makes complete sense. What a great explanation. And just like you said, you'd think it'd be better to cover every place of the water and look every spot of the water, but you're exactly right. You're spending more time putting your cast where those fish are, like understanding that. And that was just this theory that you picked up. It it plays to the importance of fishing with other guys and fishing with people that are better than you, and then always being willing to learn. And fly fishing is such a great endeavor that we never stop learning. If you open your mind to it, you fish with other people, and you're taking in ideas, you never stop learning. What an amazing strategy that totally turned the U.S. team, made you guys better at the time, more competitive, just with that one theory alone, man. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and with any discipline, there's always, positives and negatives. And we certainly know people that are good for the sport and bad for the sport. But you're 100% right. Like, I can remember when I was 18 in that fly fishing class in Western North Carolina on the Tuckasegee River, I had walked up to an older guy, and he was catching some fish on a dry fly. It was an elk hair caddis. It was tan. And I said, gosh, I was struggling. Like, I couldn't cast. I didn't know anything, but gosh, I wanted to do it so bad. So I was out there flailing away, and he was catching fish. So I walked up to him because I thought, hey, we're common knowledge here. We're brothers, right? This guy's we both like to fish. He'll talk to me. Well, as luck would have it, I walked up to him and I said, hey, my name's Paul. I'm from here. I noticed you're catching fish. I'm not. Like, can you look at my rig? Can you tell me what you're using? Like, I don't want to bother you. I won't fish around you. And the guy was super rude, and he says, son, you just got to practice. Like, I've been doing this 30 years. You'll figure it out. Like, basically get out of here. And I told myself, if I ever get good enough to be able to do this and catch fish, like, I will never not tell somebody something if it'll help them. Like, I will never be that guy. And I was super kind of pissed off about it. And it kind of probably helped me because it gave me the fire to just read everything I could to where, I could be self-sufficient and I could make those decisions. But I think that guy, I don't know who he is, but I should thank him because, it was that motivation to where it was like, I will tell you anything I've got. Like, even a competitor, it doesn't matter to me because at the end of the day, like, you can't fish another man's game. Like, I won't lie to you. If you ask me what I'm using, I'll tell you. If you ask me where I caught him, I'll tell you. Because it just, I don't know. Just for me, it was like, well, at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to feel what I felt, trying to figure this thing out where it's unachievable, because it's not. It's totally achievable.
What a great outlook. And it's got to alleviate a lot of stress and anxiety worrying about your competition and just worrying about yourself. And I've got buddies on both sides of the fence. I've got some buddies that are old school, that would not give up a secret, that hide their bugs, that that think that other guides are following them everywhere they go, but they deal with so much anxiety and stress of worrying about it. And then, I'm on the other end of the spectrum where it's like I'm on my own journey and my own path of learning and getting better myself and trying to gather information. And guys like you and other guide buddies that I have that spend 200 days a year on the water, they're just willing to share this information, willing to fish with me, and I pick up so much from that. And so I'm the same way where, on this podcast, on the hunting podcast, whatever it is, anything I learn, any insight I have, I share with guys. And it's I don't know if I totally believe in karma, but what you put out in the world is what comes back to you. And guys are willing to share information with you, or even, I'll get instant messages about hatches that are going off on different rivers from guys I don't even know that listen to the podcast, which is just awesome. And so I think that is definitely the right way to go about it. Yeah, what an awesome attitude that you adopted just from that one day and that one jackass out on the river.
Oh man, I don't know who I don't know who he was, but I'm glad it happened. I mean, I never had like a chip on my shoulder, but like the truth was I was jealous. Like, I grew up with a single mom. There was no dad around. He had passed away in a car crash. Long story, but I remember all my friends being like, oh, I went hunting with my dad, or I went fishing with this or my uncle or that. And I didn't really have that. And I remember being just jealous as a kid. Like, man, I wish I had, something. And like, I'm telling you, and a lot of people listening know this, but when you don't have anything, like we grew up super poor, like welfare poor, when you don't have anything, like it makes it hard. You can get good at stuff, but I don't know if I'd want it any other way because I didn't know any other way. But like, it was not the easiest path forward, not being able to afford basic equipment. Like there was times I would literally sit on the creek and wish I had a fishing pole because we didn't have one. And I would just say, okay, well, I don't have anything. So let me just, suck it up. What else can I learn? What's bugs are here? Let me flip some rocks. Like, can I see any fish? Like, and I would kind of go through my head, like, if I had a fishing pole, here's what I would do. And like, I, I didn't get it easy. It was tough. And, it kind of transferred over as I started, I got older and got jobs and had money. And to this day, like, I don't have 10,000 flies. I don't have 10,000 rods. Like, I fish very simply. I keep very few flies. They're all pheasant tails or hare's ears. Like, I have a very stripped down utilitarian approach to fly fishing, hunting, the whole 9 yards, just because I never had the luxury, if you will, of, well, here's a brand new rod and Dad takes us on vacation to Montana in August. And man, I had to grind the shit out of it to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I mean, probably instilled a lot of what you have today. But yeah, that's what a great approach. Man, I like your simple approach to it too. You mentioned pheasant tails and hare's ears. I kind of approach fly fishing the same way, as I don't have a million different patterns. I have the patterns that I believe in, that are proven to me, that catch fish. Some that I tie, some that I'll buy here and there. But I kind of find my patterns I like that work. And then there's no need to try the next hot thing or the next quality bug. Like I've got what works for that hatch or for that streamer pattern for that river. And then that's what I like to fish. And a lot of times it's not the fly for me, it's the presentation. It's the way it's fished, and the right colors and the right profile, and those fish seem to eat it. It sounds like your approach is similar.
It's absolutely correct. So I can remember, and any of the guys I coached through the years, they're all young men now, but they would, verify this. I never really asked too much about the flies. I never dictated what rods or leaders they fish. I would ask them, where did they catch them? How deep did they catch them? Was it overcast? Was it cloudy? Like the interesting stuff. If I liked fishing a Frenchie with a red collar and you liked an orange collar, well, I don't care. Like, that's fine. Like, the reality is, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but trout are pretty simple animals. I mean, they have a brain the size of a Fruit Loop, and sometimes they can be hard to catch. I'm not saying they're easy, but I'm also not saying they're hard. I'm thinking I know that we complicate things often. And, most of the time you have to think like nymph fishing. So a nymph weighs, we'll call next to nothing, which is quasi-scientific. And then we're putting a tungsten bead on it. I don't care if it's a 2 millimeter. We're tying it to a piece of tippet, and you're trying to get a natural drift. Like, the odds are not in your favor. Like, it already looks bad. So for me, I kept it simple and was like, okay, well, if I can fish lighter tippet, if I can get those flies to kind of tumble like they're supposed to, if they're too heavy, they're going to look extra unnatural. If they're too light, they're not going to get down in that kind of mixing zone where those fish eat. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to fish light tippet. That's 7X, which people freaked out about, but with, the right equipment, it's no problem. I'm going to fish flies that are the exact right weight. And then, I'd fish flies that were the approximate shape, and then the color was last. And I was like, okay, well, mayflies are hatching, so I'm going to fish a pheasant tail. Or caddis are hatching, so I'm going to fish a, basically a hare's ear. Or there's midges hatching, so I'm going to fish a, zebra midge. And it worked. So some people say, oh, that's simpleton. I don't know. I mean, maybe, but fish, trout specifically, are, they're sample feeders, and they do get selective certainly at times, but it can be as hard as you want to make it. And like anything, I think it's more about confidence in the pattern. Like, here in the mountains and in East Tennessee, we fish this fly called the Puff Daddy, and it's a killer fly, and it's a CDC dry fly, and it looks just like France's F fly. It looks like Poland's. It's just the fly I have confidence in. So I throw that. I'm sure there's something better out there, but if I'm going to throw my fly or that fly it's not my fly, but with absolute confidence, then that fly is more effective because I know it's going to work, and I fish it accordingly.
confidence is a huge one, isn't it? Belief in your fly, belief in your equipment, belief in reading the water. It's amazing how when you believe in it, you catch fish. And when you doubt yourself or you're changing things around or you can't figure it, like you just can't dial in. And it seems like catching a couple is always a good confidence booster too. Once you start to hit a couple, you just start to fish that water more effectively and you just believe in it. But there's so much in the power of belief, which is so abstract when, really it's a rod and presenting that fly. But believing where you're putting that fly is a big part of it. You set the hook better. You just believe you're going to catch fish.
I remember talking about bow hunting. So I get a bow. This is a funny story. I'm hunting. A doe comes out, and I'm scared shitless. I'm like, oh, man, this is it. This is it. It's a doe. Now, in hindsight, it's a doe. At that point in time, it could have been you name the animal. Like, this was the center of my world that morning. And I remember being, I guess maybe nervous is the word, I don't know, but unsure of myself. And I shoot. I hit the doe, I kill it, but I remember when I released, I was like, the first thing I thought was like, oh man, I've screwed up. Now, and that was because I wasn't practicing enough, to be completely honest. I just got in a bow and I was anxious to I thought, if I get a kill, I'm validated. Now I started shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. I remember, this 5.5-year-old with a wonky rat comes walking by, and I'm like, all right, this is a cull buck. This thing qualifies. But I had this confidence then because I'd been shooting. Like, I was able to calmly see it, follow through. Like, I could visualize the arrow going through, follow through on the shot. Like, when I released that thing, I knew I smoked it. Like, there was no question. I was never nervous. And I think it's like fly fishing. It's the same thing. It was like I wasn't hunting scared. I wasn't fishing scared. Like, I knew I could get it done. Now, if that thing walks out at 80 yards at that point in my life, probably wouldn't have slung an arrow at it. But at 30 yards, like, I knew what I knew. Like, I can do this. And same with catching a few fish. You go to a new place and you're like, oh man, I just flew to Montana. I hope it doesn't suck. Catch 4 or 5 and you're like, I can do this. I'm gonna catch them today. I know I'm on it. So, it's fun. That's what it's all about, man.
Oh, it's
Get
so
out there,
fun.
go somewhere new and make it happen. And it's like, holy shit, they eat a pheasant tail all over the world. Sweet. I have pheasant tails. I can do this.
Yeah, it's so fun to travel to new places and challenge yourself trying to figure it out or make sense out of it. But you're right, that confidence is key. And it also makes you fish harder too. When you believe you're going to catch those fish, you're willing to wade across that river and hit that one little spot on the next side, or row real hard for your buddy down a good deep bank so he can get his cast in and hook one of those big browns. So you're right, that confidence is king. And once you do it for long enough, I have enough residual fishing days where that confidence just starts to carry over. But, I know, like, lately, I fished streamers a lot before in my past. Going down out of a boat, throwing them to the bank, you get a lot of fish to chase. But it's just here recently, like within the last couple of years, where I've really got hooked on it, as it just hunts for the biggest fish in the river. But you end up catching less of them or getting less sniffs or looks at, because you are targeting those larger fish in the river. But I've really got hooked at not just throwing it out of a boat, stopping at these big runs, and really working on my swing, and both my swing for brown trout and then the Olympic Peninsula is where I was born and raised. And so I'm constantly traveling back there for steelhead with the fly rod. I go back and do like a couple weeks each year with a couple good buddies, and it's the Wild West out of rafts and white water and trying to find these coastal steelhead that are wild and native that run up and they're the biggest in the world out of this Olympic Peninsula. It's just such a great experience, but really working hard on my deep water swing, and then also kind of my pop and pulse, which you'll like you also fish other gear for bass and for pike, I've seen, and so, as you're reeling, like a Rapala, you know how when you're reeling in a Rapala, you kind of pulse it with the tip of your rod. You pull it, reel, and that Rapala or spinner, whatever you're fishing, it kind of moves and stops and moves and stops. And I've had really good luck with this fly rod, working this and really working my angles upstream and downstream to affect my swing, and then also working that that pop, that strip pop, man, those fish are eating that thing heavy on that strip pop. But it's been so fun to take on, to really explore this new side of fly fishing. And I don't catch as much, and so some days I'll fish all day and I might only touch one or two fish. But my point is that I have to fish everywhere with that confidence, work all those insides, make sure it's swimming, and I've just got this belief in it now where I don't have to catch a fish to have that confidence. I'll work it all day long and, changing my colors from olive to black to white, and I've got this whole process now. But man, it's just been so fun figuring it out and really targeting these bigger fish.
You're blessed. You get to see like the Olympic Peninsulas. I look at it like Jurassic Park. I mean, there is some killer stuff, and there's still stuff that's relatively unknown. I certainly won't mention here, but your story brings up an interesting point, and I have to agree with. So a few years back, I met and became friends with Larry Dahlberg, who's a legend, hunt for big fish, whopper, plopper, flash boo, the whole 9 yards. And in my opinion, the best angler I've ever been around, period, bar none. And his theory was, and I agree with it, he says all anglers first they want to catch a fish. Then they want to catch the most fish they can. Then they want to catch big fish. And then they want to fish their way. And what I see, and you've done it, and I've done it, and people listening you'll go through that progression. And when you're talking about swinging flies, deep water swinging for big anadromous or whatever they may be, fish, trout, or whatever, like you're fishing your way. So some people would say, well, couldn't I just center pin with an egg stack? And it's like, sure, man, you can do whatever you want. Like it's a free world. But some people just want to fish their way. And it's like, there's an excellent lesson, Blaine Chocolate of the Game Changer fame, who's a world-class angler and one of the brightest minds in the sport. He looks at those things just like you mentioned. Like he looks at bait fish, he looks at rapalas, he looks at those. And I can remember as a young guy, I bass fished, and I didn't fly fish till I was 18. And I would never talk about the knowledge I had or the experiences I had fishing with gear, whether it be whatever, bass or whatever. Because I felt like it would, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I felt like it was like, oh, well, I didn't want to be classified as like a gear guy. Like ultimately now it's like I classify myself as an angler. Like those lessons I've learned fishing everything from, the Galapagos to tiny streams in North Carolina, there's relevant lessons in every bit of that. And all of it is clues to the puzzle. And I just don't care. I guess I'm getting all salty or something, but it doesn't matter. It's like the world to me, like in fishing, is like there's keyholes that you're looking into the world in. So if the only keyhole you look through the world in is fly fishing, well, that's all you know. Or if the only thing you do is swing ever, that's all you know. Or if all you ever do is, I throw a Carolina rigged green pumpkin lizard on my home lake in April and May, you're only looking at the world through that one keyhole. So what I've tried to do, especially I've been fortunate with the work I do now with various companies to travel and fish, is I get to look at fishing through all kinds of keyholes. Trolling, saltwater, inshore, offshore, bait, fly, this, that. Now, I can fish however I want on my own time, but who am I to say, well, there's no lesson to be learned out here trolling, Brazilianos from Marlin. There's huge lessons in that. I'm getting a glimpse into a keyhole that a lot of people can't. So when I go back home to North Carolina in the mountains here and I want to fish my way, there's lessons from that Marlin trip. There's lessons from butterfly jig and tuna in the Galapagos. There's lessons from, fishing a shad spawn on Lake Hartwell for largemouth bass. Like there's lessons in all of this on when and where they eat, why they eat, what motivates a fish to bite or not. So I've kind of just opened my eyes and enjoyed it, to be honest with you. There's a lot of information there if you're looking.
Man, I love that. I love looking through the different keyholes and just trying to grow your fishing knowledge in general and how it transposes to the different streams and different ways to go about it, man. That's beautiful. I think that's really cool. Well, you get to go on so many great adventures nowadays. Like, what's some of the fishing that really gets you fired up? What are some of the great ones you've been on here recently that you love or that you've captured through your media company?
Man, that's a hard one. So I'll think in the last year or two, um, as a kid of little means, I mean, it's all awesome, but things that stick out to me were I always had dreamed of tarpon. So I think any fly fisherman, even if they've caught tarpon, dream about a tarpon. So I can think about, really good days in Florida Bay where fish are acting right. God knows they don't always. And they're eating, and they come in on a string and they eat it good, and they do what they're supposed to do. Killer. A trip I got to go on with Jaco Lucas to Tanzania to film tigerfish for the fly fishing film tour. That made a big impression on me, just because, we are in the middle of nowhere is an understatement. Hippos, you name it, it's out there. These monster tigerfish in a fishery that was just recently discovered. Unbelievable. That we were discovering things each day we were fishing. Like, that's how fresh it was. And that, and probably Dubai was a good one. We did a film tour out there with Beatty Outdoor Productions with RA, Brian Gregson. Queenfish, like some of those exotic locations where I wasn't nervous, but I was like, man, this is so far away from the mountains of North Carolina. Like, I wonder what these fish are going to eat. I wonder what they're going to do. I wonder how they act. They act just like every other fish. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. And, those trips stick out in my mind, the tarpon, the tigerfish, and the queenfish, as just awesome experiences. And, those people we meet, most of them didn't even speak the same language as us, but they're our people, and we got along fine. We drank plenty of beers and hung out and got along. Couldn't even communicate with each other, and happily spent the week together because we all loved the same thing. So,
Man, how cool. Yeah, those would be tough to beat. Those tarpon are amazing animals. That first one you mentioned, and the Keys, and then all the Bahamas and where they're fished at such nice weather. And then I love the process, man. Like those flats boats. The funnest way to fish is out of a drift boat or a flats boat. I love wade fishing too, and I love wading around fishing for bonefish and things. But fishing from a poled boat on an elevated stand, and then it's just a different style of fishing. No blind casting. It's like a combination between hunting and fishing, where you really use your eyes to spot those fish. And tarpon, when they're feeding and when they're rolling and when you're into them, there's nothing funner. But I love just pulling across those flats, looking and hunting for them, and excuse me, all the different types of bottom that you see, from white sand to moving grass, seagrass, and being able to hunt for those things, man. It's just a really fun way to fish. And then when you do see one, the pressure's really on. Like, you see one and you get one chance to make that cast in that strip to bring it by them with the wind and everything, and it's you and your buddy that's pulling you around, and so you got the pressure of two on you and trying to make that cast. Man, I don't think there's any more exciting way to fish than for those things. I've been to the Salt a couple times and chased some critters around, but I'm definitely planning some trips to the future. I just love that salt fishing, man.
Well, with your hunting ability and fishing ability, it's the same thing. And I don't know, maybe I like the punishment. I can remember filming down there, and or with some guides, and they just smash them all day. And I go back the next year, ended up buying a little skiff, and I was like, you have to go down to Florida. They're there. I sucked. Jesus, I sucked. I could not find fish. I found a few redfish or whatever. And I was like, wow, like, I am not good. So I just kept at it. It was the same thing. It was that same feeling I had when I was 18. And I was like, man, I'm going to try to apply principles here and like just make smart, fishy decisions. Like, the answer is simple. It's in front of you. What is it? And I really enjoyed going down there by myself and trying to figure it out, because finding a trout in, a riffle and finding a permit in the Keys is not the same meal. You know what I mean? So I loved it, though. And to this day, I still love really anything. I don't care what fish is in front of me. I want to catch it. But I really love the hunt that is both flats fishing, shallow water fly fishing, and I love the hunt that is offshore fishing, because you can go wherever you want.
Man.
Where are they at? I don't know.
How crazy cool, like this journey that you've been on, to get yourself a skiff and go out there and try to learn it yourself. I mean, that's really paying your dues. And
I sucked, believe me. I spent a lot of days with no fish, and those fuel bills and hotel bills were real. But I had to know, like, can I find these things? And eventually you start finding more of them, and you start finding a few more, and then it starts coming together. You start building those. My general lesson was, I don't have to be an expert in the fish, but I do need to be an expert in what they eat. So if I can find what they eat, if I can find whatever the bait is, I can find the fish. So that's what I've always done. Is I don't look for tarpon necessarily. I look for mullet or lanes, or if it's migratory, obviously we're looking for travel lanes. But same thing with bass. It's like I don't know why a bass does the things it does sometimes, but I'm intimately familiar with shad and blueback herring. So if I can find them, I'm close. I'm close. I know I can get close to them.
Yeah, I like that. You've mentioned multiple times in the podcast looking for that food source, and yeah, that seems so spot on to me. But man, there's just nothing better than having passion in life, and like traveling to these different places and being engaged in trying to figure it out and solve the pieces. It really makes me feel alive as a human being. I feel so bad for guys that haven't found their passion, but it sure seems like you found yours in multiple facets.
Yeah, I'm lucky, honestly. Like, and we're fortunate nowadays, I guess fortunate and unfortunate, but we have our cell phones at our disposal. So if you want to see those places, you just type it in. But I encourage people too that you can be familiarized with something, but you can't experience it until you've been there. Like if you don't know what, it smells like when there's a mullet run up the East Coast, or if you've not, seen those things, then you really should. And I've been guilty of it too. I'm trying to think of an example, like peacock bass. I had seen a bunch of peacock films, and I'll be honest with you, I was like, okay, well, I'm not super impressed. Like I was happy to go. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I was like, I thought I knew something about peacock bass because I'd watched some films. And the truth of the matter was, when I got there and caught the first one, it was 10 pounds, and it pulled harder than anything I'd experienced. And they were sneaky, and we had to really get after it. They weren't dumb. I realized that I was doing a huge disservice, and it's pretty damn arrogant to think that I knew shit about these fish because I'd watched a video. And I told myself then, I was like, I will never be that guy that's like, oh yeah, I know about that. It's like, no, you don't. I've seen it once. I mean, I can watch a video, but experiencing, what that thing's really like and the process it goes through, I said, I'm not going to do that again. So I just thought, oh, well, it's just a peacock bass. Like, people have been catching these things forever. Like, this will be awesome, but I've got this. I did not have that at all. So I was like, all right.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
I like that awareness. I think you're right. Until you experience it yourself, being there and holding the rod or fishing for those fish, you just don't know it. And it's easy for it. It's almost human nature to downplay, the stuff that you don't do. To think that the stuff that I'm doing is the coolest stuff around. And then, but yeah, to go experience it, and that is definitely on my list. South America, the peacock bass and Dorado, and oh my gosh, it just looks amazing down there. But yeah, how cool! And we get one life to live. We got to try to do as many things as we can, and and two, it's big travel, but just like you stated, like simply owning your flies and your fly rods, it's also money, but it seems like any place where you're located, there's a bunch of cool things to do right around you, and you have to take advantage of where you live and where you can travel to. Especially me on a blue collar budget, like located in Montana. I get some of the best fly fishing for trout, and then steelhead. That coast is really close to me, and then for salt and things, I want to experience those things, but that's where I save my pennies, and I book a trip a year, or I do a trip a year down to one of these destinations and go try to experience that as well. But yeah, life is all about trying to do as many of these cool things as we can.
Yeah, I hope that in our world, and I'm a creator of digital media, but I hope that we never lose that. It's like, to this day, I'm still get super jacked about finding places, or I'll even challenge myself, and I'll challenge you to do it too. Like, from your house, draw a circle on MapQuest 10 miles, and I want you to find a trout in still water, just for fun, because why not? Somewhere in that 10-mile circle, barring there's still water there. So I'll do stuff like that all the time, because I'm a maniac, and just say, okay, well, this is it. Like, I'm going to find something. And the more I look, the more I find. I'm like, wow, there's a little bit more here than I thought. Like, I thought the stream sucked, or I assumed X, Y, Z. And you're like, I'm just going to go up there and sniff around. And lo and behold, especially in Montana, the mountains here as well. Like, you're not going to be too far off from something pretty cool. You'd be surprised what you find.
Exploring is so fun, isn't it? Like, showing up at a new place and trying to figure it out. It's just my fun. It's a new river that I haven't floated, or just something that I haven't seen, just something different. And you're right. Like, we all need to be better at that, and me included. I'm fortunate where I have so many great rivers around me, but I also get stuck in a rut where I fish these rivers that I know, where there's another river system, or another still water, or another high mountain lake that I haven't hiked to, and yeah, I need to continue to get out and fish these new places, and you don't know what you know until you know it. Like, you don't, like you said, the more you go, the more you learn. I think that's what you stated. Like, you're so right. Like, you go to these places, and even I've been fishing this river recently that I haven't been to in 10 years, and it's amazing the new lessons that I'm learning there, and some of these. To go back there with more skill now and more knowledge, I'm able to catch more and bigger fish out of there, and so that's been really fun for me. But I need to continue to explore, fish this. I fish the Missouri quite a bit, but
Man.
big fish come from big rivers, and this Missouri is not too far for me, where I need to make more runs over there and explore some of the bottom stretches more that I've only drifted a time or two, So yeah, we all need to do our part and continue to explore. It's such a fun way to go about it.
The Moe's gnarly. There's some big ones in there for sure.
Oh my gosh, right? Yep. So where are you located now?
So I'm in Franklin, North Carolina. So I'm west of Asheville, about an hour in the Smoky Mountains. Pretty convenient. A couple hours of Atlanta, a couple hours of Charlotte, a couple hours of Knoxville. Really good fishing around. I mean, we've got great trout fishing. The ocean's 8 hours away, but good trout, good bass, and nowadays with the media companies doing well, and I'm traveling often with that. I'm doing hunting and fishing marketing for Black Rifle Coffee Company, so I'm super busy with that. And we're going to be doing some cryptech fishing stuff this summer coming up. So it's a good kind of centralized location where I can access what I need to essentially do my job, and also just stay sane when I'm not working, so I can keep fishing.
Man, yeah, those cryptech guys, that'll be a fun trip. Those are sure good guys.
Yeah, I've known those guys a while, and they're, I think our motto at Drift Media is authenticity is a powerful qualifier. And for me, I'm always excited, like, as a media guy, and just generally speaking, as you don't always have the luxury of having a complete say in everything you do. Like, you're essentially working contracted at the leisure of the client. So when you have a client like Black Rifle or like Cryptech or whatever that truly are passionate outdoorsmen, that truly are good guys, that get it, that are authentic, I mean, these guys are the real deal. It makes our job so much easier. It's like, man, this is a no-brainer. Like, these guys are authentic. Where they come from, what they do, what they believe in. Like, this is not for show. This is all the real deal. And it's sustainable, frankly. Like, your brand is what people say about you when you aren't in the room. So people are always trying to, rebrand or this or that. It's like, these legacy brands or these really good companies, man, they know who they are, and it's not changing, and that gets me fired up.
Man, I've got that same belief, that authenticity in podcasting and writing and filming, whatever it is you're doing, like just portraying the true picture of what's going on. Man, that's awesome. Well, where can people check out some of the stuff that your media company has done? I know I saw that film in Dubai was amazing that you put out. Where can guys watch some of the other films that are out?
A lot of stuff's at Drift Media Productions. We have a website and social. The Dubai film I was shooting or shot, it was produced with R.A. Beatty, who's a legend, and Brian Gregson, the photographer in the fly fishing space. So that's at Beatty Outdoor Productions and Off the Grid Studios. Most of those links are floating around on our pages, so they're easy to find. Also on the Fly Fishing Film Tour page. So yeah, I mean, we keep that stuff posted up most of the time, and especially now with the state of things, like we've been releasing a bunch of content that has been kind of shelved for a while, just so people can enjoy it. I mean, that stuff won't change. The only thing, unfortunately, that might change is the fisheries might go away, but that content will always live on. So it's out there. There's a lot of people watching it.
Man, how cool. Yeah, I'm going to go check it out. Man, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to meet you and then get an hour of your time on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate
What a great conversation, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Like I say, didn't say it in the beginning, but I've read your stuff and watched your guys' stuff for a long time, and I want to say that I appreciate the content you've put out, and I appreciate the writing. So I'm really excited to be on. Like I've always felt fulfilled watching this, or reading or watching the stuff you guys did. Like I knew it came from a place of, pure passion. Like just these guys are definitely into it. I don't feel like I'm reading, an 18-year-old kid's hasn't done its thoughts on the world. Like I've really, I mean, for like a decade, really enjoyed what you guys did. So I'm super, super excited to be on.
Oh, thanks so much for the compliment. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we try to live the life 365 for sure, just like you do. So, yeah, thanks so much, man. I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate you. If you get to North Carolina, call me. I'll show you some stuff that's not on the map.
Oh, I'd love to see it. And likewise, if you're ever in Montana, give me a shout.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Man, fun conversation. That Paul Bourcq is fishy. He goes all over the place fishing. Man, what a great conversation. I just love some of his terms and the way he describes things and the way he looks at water, which is totally outside the box from everybody else. And so I just think that's so interesting. So thank him for taking the time. He took an hour out of, he was over doing what, like a police or a ambulance or some sort of first aid class, and kind of pulled out of the class to jump on with me and do a recording. But guy is just so fishy. Really having fun meeting these different guys in and out of the fly fishing industry, and just having these in-depth conversations and comparing and contrasting, what I know to what they know. And like I say, I may be a fishy dude, but that Paul, he's on another level, which is fun to talk to people that are better than you. That's how you get better and how you improve. And just so many in-depth conversations with great fly fishermen. It can't help but rub off on me, right? So just been having a blast. Coming into the summer season now, so get some of this construction work out of my hair and really start hitting it evenings and weekends here. Getting the boat out, and so yeah, I think I'll try to get out tonight. I don't have any podcast tonight, so try to get out, see what's happening on the water, probably throw a streamer, something of that nature. But just been super fun doing this podcast and getting it out to you guys. So yeah, I appreciate all the support. Like I say, it all helps out, and that's the way this podcast is going to survive, is by your guys' support and sharing it with buddies. It's so tough to make a splash in any platform or any like fly fishing. It's just tough to say, yep, I'm here and I've got a podcast. And so I really appreciate you guys listening in, and I'm only going to get better at having these conversations, and only going to get better at knowing what helps you guys or motivates you guys or is entertaining to listen to. So yeah, just going to keep my head down here and keep working away and keep getting these good guests. Got a couple big ones coming up I'm super excited about. So Thanks you guys for the support. Thanks Eastmans for the belief in this podcast. And rock and roll. I'll check in with you guys next week.